All right, it's 7 o'clock. Is everybody ready to begin? Thank you. I call this meeting of Saanich Council to order on Monday, May 14th. We have a typical agenda and format tonight. We're going to have a council meeting followed by a committee of the whole meeting, and we're going to have Councilor Bergen chair committee of the whole. If you were here for the Let's Speak on the Mums Like Us presentation or 1550 Arrow Road, if you can hold your comments until we get to the committee of the whole, that would be most appropriate. We'll get on with the council agenda, and there will be a public input period for items D and E and F on the agenda. I'll cue those as we get to that.
Pardon me, would it be possible to turn up the volume? I cannot quite hear you in the front row.
All right. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. All right. All right, so with that, we'll get on with the council meeting, and we'll start with the adoption of minutes.
Move adoption.
I'm just going to get Madam Clerk to introduce the item.
The minutes for adoption are the special committee of the whole and special council of March 1st, the council meeting and committee of the whole meetings of March 7th.
Move adoption. Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to item B, bylaws for final reading.
Item B1 is in 3 parts, council. The first item is to rescind the motion that approved the development permit DPR 00543. The second will be to give final reading to zoning bylaw amendment 9354 and final approval again of the development permit. This is in regard to the properties at 4247, 4253, and 4255 DM Road.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So this is just a housekeeping item. Can we have a motion to rescind development permit DPR 00543?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. And a motion for a final reading of bylaw 9354. Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Dermott is opposed. That motion carries. And finally, a motion to approve and issue development permit DPR 00543.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Dermott is opposed. And that motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This next item is 4400 West Saanich Road. It's land use contract discharge bylaw. This is for final reading of bylaw number 9363 to discharge the land use contract over the said lands.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? See none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And this next
Next item,
item
please.
is 4400 West Saanich Road as well. This is rezoning to the P2 and P4 zone. And a secondary motion is for the approval of the development permit DPR 00596.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That's carried unanimously.
Move approval of the second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that takes care of that. So now move on to the public input period for the council agenda items. If you'd like to speak to item D1, fire dispatch and communication services agreement with Esquimalt. D2, sole source purchase of Oracle licenses for the JD Edwards upgrade and interim payroll software project. D3, request for proposal JD Edwards upgrade project. D4, CRD bylaw number 4058, Capital Region District Climate Action and Adaptation Service Establishment bylaw. D5, Fortis BC purchase order approval. E1, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer subcommittee terms of reference. F1, Pop for Parks, establishing a fund for nature's future. And F2, the final one, reduction of non-migratory east population to help sustain local food. If you'd like to speak to any of those items, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address. You can limit your comments to 5 minutes. It would be most appreciated. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to these items? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I'm here tonight to speak about item D4, which is a CRD bylaw number 4058. And I want to start my remarks by saying I am opposed to, I am a believer that climate changes exist and it's a real problem. Having said that, I'm looking at this bylaw and I'm very disturbed from a financial point of view. And I have been speaking to you the last several meetings on the budget, and this would be a further topic related to the budget. This bylaw asks for an increase in the amount that the CRD can levy. Oh, sorry, Karen Harper, 3430 Bon Air, thank you. This bylaw amendment asks that the CRD be allowed to raise the amount that it can leverage for this work by 50%, from $200,000 to nearly $300,000. And it further asks that the base rate that is charged to any member of the public that is paying the taxes is increased by 8.33% on a permanent basis. And I find that, having read the materials, totally incomprehensible. There's nothing in this report that even begins to look like a business case. And I think that this is a good example of nickel and diming the public to death without having a clear idea of how you're going to spend the money. Why a 50% increase? There's no statement of why a 50% increase. Why 8.33% on the base rates? There's no clear answer. So it's not that I'm opposed necessarily to the work that they may or may want to do. I do not think there's enough information here for you as our representatives to agree to an increase of this size, even though for each individual it's a tiny amount, and I quite recognize that. But it is a further example of over and over and over again looking through budgets and finding places where things just go up because it can go up. And I would like you to think long and hard about whether you vote for this or not. I note that the resolution only requires that 2/3 of the bodies in the CRD actually support it. So you could in fact vote against it without causing it not to go through, but at least you would have shown that you do have some concern for what I would call a significant lack of a business case to increase an amount, this amount significantly, even though for each individual it's not a very large amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Please come forward. Call for a second time on these items D, E, and F. Any other members of the public that wish to speak? Call for a third and final time. All right, with that, we'll close the public input period and we'll move on to resolutions for adoption. Item D1. Madam Clerk, please introduce that for us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This first item is the Fire Dispatch and Communication Services Agreement with the Township of Esquimalt. The report of the Fire Chief is recommending the Council authorize the renewal of the Fire Dispatch and Communication Services Agreement for the period March 2016 through December 31st, 2016.
Thank you. Councilor Grace?
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to item D2, please.
This is the sole source purchase of Oracle licenses for the J.D. Edwards upgrade and the HR payroll software projects. The report of the Director of Corporate Services and the Director of Finance are recommending the Council approve the purchase of JDE Expense Management, JDE Payroll, and JDE User Productivity Kit in the amount of $299,670.
Councilor Dermott.
Move the recommendation.
Second by Councilor Haynes. Discussion? Any questions for our Director of Finance or Director of Corporate Services? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the recommendation then. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please.
Thank you. This is the next item is the request for proposal 0816, the J.D. Edwards upgrade project. The report of the Directors of Finance and Corporate Services are recommending the Council award the RFP for systems implementation and managed services for the J.D. Edwards upgrade and change orders to ERP1 Consulting Inc. in the amount of $1,094,360.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Someone seconded? Seconded. Any questions? Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? None opposed, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please.
This is the CRD Climate Action and Adaptation Services Establishment Bylaw. The request of the Capital Regional District is the council review the amended bylaw and give consent to the adoption of the bylaw in accordance with the Local Government Act.
Councilor Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the recommendation. If there's a second, I'll speak to it.
Second by Councilor Bryce. Go ahead, Councilor Durham.
Thank you. I certainly understand the concern of the member of the public because the information that was provided is somewhat scant. However, the CRD works in a situation where, of course, they have services on behalf of municipalities, and they only carry out those services that the municipalities at one point asked for or agreed to. The issue for the CRD is that there is a likelihood that we are going to try to ramp up very considerably climate action this year. I'm chair of the Environment Committee, and the Environment Committee has been tasked by the board chair to try to provide as quickly as possible a comprehensive scheme as to how we might address the issue of climate change mitigation and adaptation that are rapidly falling upon us. This request that is in front of us is not saying money will be spent. It is trying to be precautionary to create a situation where, as we ramp up, we will have the ability to do that. Under the current limits, the ability to ramp up is rather seriously curtailed. So it is an attempt to say, as we embark upon an expanded program, will municipalities agree to a different limit which we may or may not reach. Thank you.
Councilor Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, and perhaps it's to Councillor Durham as chair of the CRD's Environment Committee, or perhaps it's to staff. I don't know who's best able to answer these questions, but what I found was, in reading the report, there's not a lot of supporting information about what CRD as a service intends to do. So in effect, why are they looking at expanding the capacity to raise funds? And I should preface that by saying, obviously, as Saanich Environment Committee Chair, I'm very supportive of climate initiatives or initiatives to curtail greenhouse gas emissions. I just want to ensure that whatever we're enabling is clear.
Councilor Durham, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, this is essentially the problem. There is an intent, both it would appear at the political level and at the staff level, to ramp up the response to climate change. That has not yet been as well defined as it should be. The problem being, if we wait to define it and then start to go through the process of getting approval from various municipalities, it delays the process considerably. So this is not, as I mentioned, this is not to say that this money or this level will be reached. It's a recognition of the fact that in all likelihood, the increased response the CRD is anticipating will need a new maximum level. But my own preference would have been that we had a defined program. We went through the process then of saying, will this and so forth, but it would probably delay the situation significantly. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Councilor Bryce, and then wrap up.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering, we don't want to fall into the situation as expressed by Councillor Durham, where at some point when the CRD wants to move into an expansion that the authority isn't there for the spending. However, I think there's been enough expression around the table here tonight to suggest that there needs to be a bit more justification for the instrument, which really this is, which says that at some point, as expressed by Councillor Durham, a case may be made where additional dollars need to be spent. And so this is one of those times when the council here does have a little bit of leverage. those of us who sit on the CRD board, we can be confident that, we want it to go by us, that, we don't approve. But I think that given that this is an opportunity for a council to have some input, I'm thinking that perhaps we could postpone the approval of this pending some further documentation from the CRD staff to give a comfort level to the members of council.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. I think that's a very good idea because the material that we have so far is somewhat in the form of what I would call a blank check request that needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. I think that would be most appropriate. I do have a speakers list, and I'm going to go next to Councilor Murdoch and then to Councilor Brownhoff and then oh, sorry. Behind my list. Sorry, Councilor Brownhoff and then Councilor Haynes. Go ahead, Councilor Brownhoff.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the problems with this is that the work that's defined is probably in the strategic plan that the CRD board worked on. And so even in the bylaw, it says that it'll be monitoring, reporting on air quality, energy consumption, and greenhouse gas emissions, collaboration and cooperation with members on climate action and adaptation, and information dissemination, public education. But then there's the whole board has approved a strategic plan. So all those initiatives are within that strategic plan. So that might be something that we're missing at this table. Some of us participated in the strategic plan, so we know that. But perhaps by postponing, we could just ask the CRD to either come forward and do a presentation on what the program's going to look like and why they need the extra funding.
Thank you. Councilor Haynes.
I appreciate hearing from our CRD directors in that vein. Recently, we pulled ourselves back from funding on the citizens' involvement in the budget review process for similar reasons. We hadn't fully articulated how and why the money should be spent. And I'm seeing the same situation here. And I think it's, if we're going to hold ourselves to that standard, we should also hold applications from the CRD to that standard. If the information is there, it could come forward fairly smoothly from the strategic plan, but I think that there should be more detail here. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Councilor Workman and then back to Councilor Dermott.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Dermott made a comment, and I have a lot of respect for our directors, doing a great job. But coming back to ramping up, it's an interesting word, but I'm not sure what it means, and I think it would help me, and I think it would help many of us to know what that term really does mean and what the CRD is trying to achieve with the ramping up. Thank you.
Councilor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move a motion that we refer this back to the CRD with a request that as soon as possible at a future meeting, they provide a presentation to this council to give additional detail.
Second.
I think, wasn't it postponed put forward by Councilor Bryce?
I contemplated it.
Okay.
This is giving some direction.
All right, so we're going to go with the referral then. Any discussion on the referral? Councilor Plant.
Thank you. I will support this, but I just, for the record, would want us to be clear that we're going to seek clarification on what essentially is a 32-cent increase. And that increase, if we're going to look at 32 cents for this, we better do 32 cents on everything. Because the principle I appreciate is that they're asking for something without telling us what it's for, but it is 32 cents. Thank you.
Any more discussion? You want to call the question on the referral then? All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item T5. This is the late item. Madam Clerk, could you please introduce that for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a late item. It's the Fortis BC purchase order approval. The report of the Director of Engineering is recommending the Council, pursuant to the provisions of the operating agreement between the District and Fortis BC, that Council authorizes the purchase order in the amount of $325,200. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take a motion, can we just have a brief introduction by the Director of Engineering on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report before Council is, as Clerk mentioned, for their approval from Fortis BC to temporarily relocate their gas main that's under Wilkinson Road in anticipation of the Wilkinson Bridge replacement project. There's some utility work that needs to be done ahead of the contractor getting involved in the project.
Councilor Murdoch, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Director of Engineering. Is it correct that any purchase order would have to be authorized by Saanich, or is there a threshold of dollar value? Or sorry, authorized by Saanich Council, obviously, it would have to be authorized by Saanich.
Yeah, through the mayor and Councilor Murdoch, currently our purchasing policy states that any purchase order over the expense of $200,000 needs council approval. So under that, the directors have approval to approve the purchase order.
Any other questions? Can I call for a motion on the recommendation?
So
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item E, recommendations from committees. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce the item for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this next item is a recommendation from the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee. This is with the requesting the council approve the terms of reference for the LGBTQ subcommittee as amended at the LGBTQ subcommittee's meeting on February 10th.
Thank you. I want to Councilor Plant to introduce this item.
Thank you. I will move that we move the recommendation to amend the terms of reference.
Second.
So I'll just briefly inform council why this has come back here. Because the council approved the initial terms of reference, any changes need to come back here. When we agreed to have the one-year trial of this committee, the language that was the basis of the terms of reference basically were borrowed from the Vancouver project. And when I had the inaugural meeting with the subcommittee, we reviewed our terms of reference and recommendations were made by said members of the committee that then came back to the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee. The Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee had no issue with them, felt that the changes were stronger, and as such passed it on. I would ask for your support tonight in essentially just affirming that the feedback that we received from members of the LGBT community as to what they think would be beneficial as terms of reference are indeed what council would support.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Councilor Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am certainly supportive of this subcommittee and would be interested...
Could you turn your microphone on, Councilor Bryce?
Pardon me.
Thank you.
Supportive of this subcommittee and would ask the chair of the committee what is meant by encourage civic engagement and how that might actually play out.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, back to Councilor Bryce. I think it would be, for example, something in the form of participating in a pride activity or encouraging the municipality to be aware of LGBTQ issues, such as any proclamations that could come forward. For example, around transgender issues, there is a day coming up in March that the committee, through Healthy Saanich, has asked the mayor to declare a day of visibility for those people who are from the trans community who often do not appear. The civic engagement is really just around the form of making members of the LGBTQ community feel that they can participate just the same as everybody else in our community, because as some of the members have told me, some don't feel that they can currently.
Councilor Wordman.
Thank you very much. There's one line that caught my attention. The subcommittee will meet 4 to 8 times per year in accordance with the schedule. And this is a pilot project, and I guess from where I'm sitting, I'd feel better if the terms of reference here would outline what they hope to accomplish in that 1-year pilot project. Whether it goes on another year, that remains to be seen. But if it doesn't, I would like to think they accomplished what they set out to do.
It's up to you, Councilor Plant. Go ahead.
Thank you. Obviously, anytime something is created, there is a desire to have it be impactful and to leave a legacy. The committee has agreed that it will create a report on the activities throughout the year. It has been making recommendations to Healthy Saanich, and this council will see those. There also has been, at the interest and the suggestion of one of the committee members, to do a needs assessment for LGBTQ issues in Saanich. And so that's going to come to us because this member of the committee is actually a professor at Royal Roads. They have the academic background to carry out such a task and has also procured some funding to do that. So we will hopefully end up with a document and recommendations. And there have already been 7 recommendations that have come out of that subcommittee to Healthy Saanich, some of which you will see in future council meetings. So most certainly there will be a document with the year's activities as well as the needs assessment by December of this year.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanders, and then Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the chair of the Healthy Saanich Committee. I wanted to question under membership, the number of members, because it says here that the committee will be appointed by a Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee who may not currently be members of the committee. So does that mean some members of the Healthy Saanich Committee will be on this and then there will be others? What is the number? Like our advisory committees are usually 8.
Thank you. The Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee struck a working group to adjudicate those people who had applied. We had 12 members of the public apply for 11 positions. We decided to recommend back to the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee to take all 12 in the spirit of inclusiveness in many ways, and so we did do that. There are not any members of Healthy Saanich on the subcommittee. There were no applicants from that. However, the very first meeting between of the LGBTQ subcommittee was on the same night as Healthy Saanich, and there was an overlap of time, about 15 minutes, where they met each other, as well as some members stayed for the inaugural meeting. Members of Healthy Saanich know that they're welcome to attend. The LGBTQ subcommittee meetings are open to the public. The meeting agenda and minutes are posted, but there are no members from Healthy Saanich on it. The language that you see in the yellow was just meant to clarify that members could be, but they were not. The language the committee felt before made it seem like they couldn't be.
Okay, my other part of the question is then, is it 12 members? Is that
13, including myself.
okay, so there's the chair and
Correct. The unusual size was trying to acknowledge that the LGBT community, LGBTQ, we didn't want to just have a single person as a spokesperson for any one community, so we were able to ensure that there was at least 2 under each of the L, G, B, T, and Q. So that was important. So I think if we had gone with the traditional 8, it perhaps could have led to a committee being pushed in one direction because of a single representative from said community.
Councillor Haynes, questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chair. So just a comment first of all. It's encouraging to see that something that was lifted from Vancouver has then gone through the committee and had local representative speak to how to make it more resonant for Saanich. If we come back up to the first sentence, and it says, and encourage civic engagement to improve. Is there a sense there that you might want to have messages going out through Park and Recs or Saanich Facebook, just to embrace the larger community? Is that part of the modalities you're looking for?
Thank you. I think that's certainly what the committee is interested in doing. Some of the recommendations that have come out thus far to the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee that have not come here are recognition of ensuring that Saanich spaces are safe and welcoming for all residents. And so towards that end, there has been the suggestion of some form of signage on Saanich properties that says we are an inclusive, welcoming community. So that would be something that the committee has recommended already and will likely come to a subsequent council meeting.
I'll just close with the last comment I made, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I did attend the inaugural meeting, and it was an impressive time to see the leadership that was coming forward, and not just from the community, but that Saanich was taking leadership in this space. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Any more discussion? Question from our CAO. Go ahead.
Sorry, through the mayor, I just want to make a point for council, just as a point of information and to understand some implications. There's one addition, it's the 4th bullet from the bottom of the list of bullets in the mandate, which speaks to consideration of any matters which may be referred to the committee by council, staff, or the public. Or the public piece is somewhat unusual for an advisory committee or a task group rather than advisory committee, in that it does create the situation, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but it does potentially create the situation where work could be being undertaken by an advisory committee or a task group of an advisory committee that council is not aware of. I just want council to be aware of that, because it does have implications, potential implications for the future in terms of work that's ongoing without council and perhaps the broader public understanding that work is important.
Councilor Connect, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Thorkelson, for bringing that to our attention. I appreciate that advice. Certainly, the committee members have been told repeatedly that they are a product of Healthy Saanich, and everything goes through Healthy Saanich as far as any actual motions and activity. The outreach and things like that, I think the committee will perhaps engage in, but certainly under the understanding that Healthy Saanich has to endorse it. The comments you make are a little puzzling to me, because many times advisory committees will have presentations made from the public, and given that our advisory committees operate under the structure of the council procedures bylaw, at this meeting someone can come and make a delegation and make a request from that. I think, to be perfectly honest, what the intent behind adding for the public was that the members of the committee wanted their connections in the community to be able